And in the normal tradition of faculty who go on sabbatical, thank you for coming to my week 10 of the end of the quarter talk. I don't know if anyone saw how many sabbatical talks there were this week, but at least it's not Friday. I made it by 2 days. So this is not a technical talk by any means, although it was meant to be. So when I applied to go on sabbatical in fall of 2019, it was really because I just needed some rejuvenation and some restoration because I was just doggone tired and I was cranky. And my last sabbatical, I had taught at IU PUI and at IU Bloomington. I had taught human-robot interaction. And so for my new sabbatical, I said, I don't care what I do as long as I'm not in a classroom. And so I applied to work at Eli Lilly, and it was very, very difficult for me to get in the door. There's lots of restrictions, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know who it was, but somebody was like, you should probably email Darren Moody and just tell him you want to work there. And I did, and then mysteriously, all of a sudden, the gears started turning, and I got a job as a robotics and automation contractor for data-centric solutions. And that's all I wanted to do for my sabbatical. And my title, My Sabbatical Owes Me Nothing, is because my sabbatical became so much more than that. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. So, in my work as an automation engineer, this is a picture of me at work, and this is what I look like at work every day. So I didn't get the true Eli Lilly experience because as soon as I got there, the pandemic struck. So 90% of the workforce was gone, but I had to be on site because we were installing a new Trulicity pen manufacturing line. The Trulicity pen is like it's an injectable diabetic for people with diabetes insulin pen. So it was a new area. The air conditioning didn't work, and it was mandatory masking. So this was me at work every day because it was so cold. And almost as soon as the pandemic struck, I also developed a horrible case of asthmatic bronchitis, which I talk to Leanne about all the time, that never went away. So my eyes were always swollen, I was always cold, and I was always in a mask. But I was at work every day. So when I was working every day, what I would do is I would look at PLC code, I would do testing, I would give feedback. Some of the things that surprised me the most is they had me writing a design spec for something that was already installed. That's backwards, by the way. They had me checking code for stuff that was already on the line. I was like, this is not how the design process works. They're like, this is how we do it because the people in Italy wrote the code. And the thing about the people in Italy writing the code is it wasn't commented. And I'm like, these are all the things I tell my students not to do. What are you dudes doing around here? I'm trying to teach them better. Then the other thing is, I only had experience as an automation engineer as automotive. I came from automotive. I worked at Ford Motor Company, and I worked at utility. I worked at Detroit Edison. Pharmaceuticals is highly regulated. So the other thing that was completely different about this experience was I literally had to sign and date my name on everything. If I wrote an 8 and I meant to write a 9, I had to sign and date it. I got so sick of writing my name and signing on everything because everything is so highly regulated. The only other thing I would say about that experience is don't click on emails about anything. I get one email that said, hey, this is engineer Bobby and he wants to join your LinkedIn network. I clicked the email and got called into HR and had to go through spam training. Every time you do anything, the email was from the spam training people at Lilly. So, oh, I thought you about that one. And so then, they had people on site who were sending spam to you so that when you clicked on it, they could make you go through more mandatory training. And so I got in trouble for clicking a LinkedIn from a Lilly employee that asked to join my LinkedIn. So that was the other thing, is everything you did had training. So every 3 months, my training expired, and I had to watch these same boring videos over and over again. And unlike the ones we have here, or maybe not, there's a quiz at the end, so you have to pay attention. All right, that's it for that. So keep things, document everything. Don't click on any emails, even from LinkedIn. No such thing as too many training videos. They do a lot of reverse engineering of stuff as well because it was easier because the people in Italy wrote it than the people here. But now they had me documenting stuff that sometimes even the language I didn't understand. It was just crazy. But anyway, that's a whole other issue. But then what happened in May? So we're wrapping up the school year. Coronavirus has now struck, which means everyone is now a captive audience in their house. So things that we normally would not have paid much attention to are now front and center because they're on social media, they're on the news, it's on CNN, and it's running continuously. So all these things happened at once. One of them was Breonna Taylor. I may have said her wrong name wrong, but she was in Kentucky. Then the George Floyd situation happened. And then I was on Twitter one evening in June, and hashtag Black in the Ivory went viral. And there was a humanities professor somewhere who was talking to her friend, and she just wanted to talk about the things that Black academics experience and nobody ever talks about. And this hashtag went viral with people just talking about things that happen at work, microaggressions, et cetera, et cetera. And I was so excited to read because I recognized a lot of the experiences. And then I got really disappointed because there was no engineering, no computer science. There were no professors, like they were all humanities professors. I'm like, dude, we go through some stuff too. And so I was talking to one of my friends and she said, what we realized is there's just so few of us that you're never going to go on social media sharing your experiences. I'm not going to talk about being a Black woman engineering professor in Indiana because it's me! You would know who it was immediately, right? And so the other thing we talked about is academics are very afraid of sharing on social media because tenure's a thing, promotion's a thing, and people can be petty, right? And so some people may never say anything about anything you do that offends them or bothers them until the most inopportune time, and that would be when you what? Go up for tenure. I had a colleague at Ohio State in a meeting, and people brought screenshots of her tweets to the meeting. So they chose that moment to question her about some of her behavior. So then another thing that happened was that Christian Cooper was a bird watcher in Central Park in New York, and this woman, Amy Cooper, no relation, called the police on him because he asked her to leash her dog because she was scaring off the birds. And she became upset about him telling her to do that. So she said she was going to call the police and say he was trying to attack her, and that also went viral. So this was the birth of Black in X. The Black in X movement was started with Black Birders Week, and that was because they were in solidarity with Christian Cooper. But Black in STEM had existed since 2014, but the explosion of Black in X created about 80 organizations, and I am co-founder of 2 of them, which are Black in Engineering and Black in Robotics. But there's Black in Neuro, Black in Psychology, Black in Geoscience, Black in whatever, right? And one of the key things about it is it was a way to build solidarity among members of this community. And it all stemmed from all these things happening. Black in the Ivory, finding a way to have this community of people who study what you study, experience what you experience, and a way to support each other. So here are some excerpts, not from the Black in the Ivory hashtag, but some things that have happened recently. And I will tell you why I didn't use the Black in the Ivory hashtag for this, but there's some drama that ended up happening after that. So here's some examples. So since then, some people have become very vocal about their experiences in academia because although this started in June of 2020, that feeling of belonging and allyship didn't go away because of that experience. And so I had a Twitter account since 2013. I had about 1,000 followers since 2013. I got most of them after I wrote the article for the New York Times, right? And in 1 year, or year and a half, I have 8,000 Twitter followers now. And what I found is that people were hungry to hear our stories, right? People were hungry to say, I didn't know people went through that. I didn't know this was a thing. And people actually are interested in my robotics content too, which I kind of found weird, because I was just like, you could always have read my papers. But then I started thinking about, some people are never going to go to your conferences. Some people are never going to read your journal papers, but that doesn't mean they're not interested in the work that you do, right? And so, although I do feel like on some level, because my husband's on me about this all the time, you do have to be careful what you say on social media. And you can't be on there acting a plum dang fool because people have lost their jobs for what they tweet. But I do think it's important that we have a way to reach out to those communities and share some of the things that we go to. So what we're starting to see is that as people are now amplifying their experiences, they not only learn that they are not alone, but these things are having long-term ramifications for the universities that are doing these things. So this is something that was amplified on social media that had a long-term effect. Dr. Paul Harris, his wife was some kind of documentary filmmaker. So when he was denied tenure, initially, you know, he was just gonna leave and that was gonna be the end of it. His wife started documenting this on Twitter. And basically the school said he didn't get tenure because he was self-published and they didn't respect the journals that he was publishing. They had never heard of the journals, but they were not his journals, right? And so as she started sharing his tenure case and it received such outrage online, the school had to then go back and rescind their decision not to give him tenure, and then as soon as he got tenure, he immediately left. And so on the right, another case that got a lot of attention was Nicole Jones at the University of North Carolina, who was the creator of the 1619 Project. Similar thing, she got an honorary position that for years had been tenured. She was the first person ever in the history of the university that they rescinded their tenure offer because members of the Board of Trustees did not want her there in the School of Journalism. And all of the School of Journalism fought for her. And finally, it amplified on social media. They offered her the position with tenure and she immediately left. She ended up going to Howard University, and just recently, I didn't put it in here, but an article came out that the accreditation level for that School of Journalism has now been dropped because of what happened with her, even though it wasn't the School of Journalism that did not want her, but it was the Board of Trustees. And so what we're starting to see is that the impact of what universities are doing is now being felt beyond just the walls, the ivory walls of the institute, because we now have social media and we have a captive audience who amplifies that. So I'm not going to play the video, but in the video here, well, maybe I'll play a little bit. She talks a little, I don't know if the sound's on, she talks a little bit about why she turned down the offer. After fighting, they fought so hard to get it for her. And she said it was a reporter who amplified it. When they decided not to give her tenure because it was her alma mater, she was just going to go. She was going to go anyway, and she was going to go quietly. And then she started to think about it.
We reported how University of North Carolina trustees agreed to offer tenure to journalist Nicole Jones after weeks of controversy. She is here with us now for her first interview since the offer was approved. It was approved last week, Wednesday, July 1st. Nicole Jones, we welcome you to CBS this morning.
Thank you so much.
What have you decided to do? We just heard the vote was 9-4, offering you the tenure. What have you decided?
Well, I've decided to decline the offer of tenure. I will not be teaching on the faculty of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. It's a very difficult decision, not a decision I wanted to make. And instead, I'm going to be the inaugural night chair in race and journalism at Howard University.
So many things to unpack there. First, let's start with you declining the offer. The vote was 9-4, clearly in your favor. There are some people that could say, you said you wouldn't take the job without being offered tenure. They offered you the tenure, and you're still saying, thanks, but no.
Absolutely.
Because?
Well, because look what it took to get tenure. So this was a position that since the 1980s came with tenure. The night chairs are designed for professional journalists who are working in the field to come into academia. And every other chair before me, who also happened to be white, received that position with tenure.
It had never been denied. No one had ever been denied tenure before.
Exactly. And I went through the tenure process and I received the unanimous approval of the faculty to be granted tenure. And so to be denied it and to only have that vote occur on the last possible day, at the last possible moment, after threat of legal action, after weeks of protest, after it became a national scandal, it's just not something that I want anymore.
Because there were two chances, it seems to me, they could have voted for tenure in November. Then you heard that the
key thing here is now, even when faculty are having these experiences and they choose not to share, it's getting out anyway. So the importance of doing that work has to come to the community, right? Because it was a white journalist who amplified her story. So one of the things that I started to do in all of my talks is to show slides like this. I talked to Nick about this recently, actually, because what I was learning is that when I was talking to people, I can't have conversations if we don't speak the same language, right? So if I'm talking about microaggressions or spirit murders or things like that, and spirit murders was one I learned while I was on sabbatical. I didn't know that term before. I was in a talk actually, and I was talking about some things, and somebody in the audience was like, well, those are spirit murders. And it struck me that basically what that is that it's not the things on the top, right? Those are all overt. Those are all things that I was like, oh God, no, I would never do that. But it's those things on the bottom, those daily microaggressions that bring on those spirit murders. So that's people saying things like, God, you're getting all these awards because you're a black person or you're a black woman. You wouldn't get them if you were a white woman or if you were a man. Or, you know, you really should do all these things for your black students. Or even the fact that I get emails every time one of the NSB students does something wrong. My God, you're killing me. Why are you telling on them? Maybe you should actually talk to them and figure out the choices they're making. And guess what? Is there anybody calling any faculty members around here when white students do things that are inappropriate? I don't know, maybe there are. And I'm not talking about my biases either. I'm talking about students from anywhere on campus. Somebody's like, aren't you the NSB advisor? Because I saw the NSB students. Really? Okay, let me stop. But anyway, so all of those are examples of spirit murder. So just these little things like white silence, color blindness, calling the police on black people, English only initiatives. I have a student right now going through something that I would choose not to share, but it's not the first time, and I wish it were the last, that they're going through something with a faculty member. And I've had students come to me when faculty members make inappropriate jokes in class, and I'm torn because it murders my spirit not knowing how I can help that student, right? And he's just like, I cannot go in that faculty member's office alone anymore. Will you come with me? No, I can't. And it broke my heart to tell him that, but I can't be involved in that. As much as I know it's wrong, I don't know what to tell him to do, right? So those are examples of spirit murders. It's all those little things that I just don't overtly know how to address. So the other one, and I want to say a little bit of this one as well, is what does allyship look like, okay? This is Ketanji Brown Jackson, and this is like after many, many days of her being asked everything from how do you define a woman to 50 other things that had nothing to do with being a Supreme Court justice. And finally, someone had had enough. So I'll play a little bit of this one.
You got here how every black woman in America who's gotten anywhere has done. By being, like Ginger Rogers said, I did everything Fred Astaire did, but backwards in heels. And so I'm just sitting here saying, nobody's stealing my job. Nobody's going to make me angry, especially not people that are called in a conservative magazine demagogic for what they're bringing up that just doesn't hold water. I'm not going to let my joy be stolen because I know you and I, we appreciate something that we get that a lot of my colleagues don't. I know Tim Scott does. When I first came to this place, I was the 4th black person ever popularly elected to the United States Senate. And I still remember a lot of mixed people, white folks, black folks work here, but at night when people are in line to come in to clean this place, the percentage of minorities shift a lot. And so I'm walking here, first week I'm here, and somebody who's been here for decades doing the urgent work of the Senate, but it's the unglamorous work that goes on no matter who's in offices. The guy comes up to me, all he wants to say, I can tell, is, I'm so happy you're here. But he comes up and he can't get the words out. And this man, my elder, starts crying. And I just hugged him. And he just kept telling me, it is so good to see you here. So good to see you here.
That happens. It's happened to me here. It happens to me at my prior university.
You got here. How?
Sometimes people will say, why do you stay? Why do you put up with the things you put up with? But it's for people like that. It's for my mother. It's for my aunt. It's for my elders, my ancestors who brag about everything I do, even if they don't understand what I do. It's for janitors and people like that who walk up to you. Even when I was an engineer at Ford Motor Company, and I was going through horrible things with all the electricians. It was the electrician, the black electrician who saw me at the bank and said, I know what they're doing to you, but we are just so happy to see a black woman engineer here. So those are the things that keep us going. And so I show this as well because although it's not the responsibility, and I say this often and I mean it, for the people of color or the marginalized and minoritized people in the organizations to fix the problem they didn't create, we have to educate them about what these things are. It's not just diversity, it's not just bringing in black and brown students, but it's about equity, inclusion, and justice. making sure that there's equitable opportunities for everyone in those spaces. And this graphic I found online, and then I started cobbling different ones together because people keep modifying it. The reality, right? What equality looks like, even though equality is still not the same for everyone. Equity looks better. Everybody can now see the game. Justice, you remove the wall altogether. You don't need the crates anymore. And then inclusion, we all get to play, right? So now I'm actually a member of the team. So thinking about what that means in the context of being a person of color in academia, in July of 2020, Black in Engineering was launched with me and two of my colleagues, Dr. Monica Cox at Ohio State and Dr. Tahira Reed-Smith at Purdue, who was actually our opening of school symposium speaker this year. And we actually had to Google, we didn't even know what it meant. What is a social justice movement? Because we're all engineers at heart. And we found that it's having a message, policy, education, and awareness, a social media campaign, a call to action, community engagement, connecting with allies, strategic planning, and finance. And so we just recently got our nonprofit status, but this is what we built Black in Engineering around, is the tenets of a social justice movement. And one of the things we created was in July of 2020, after the George Floyd killing, and everyone was speaking out, and many Black academics did not feel comfortable doing it on social media. We'd already seen that, especially Black in Engineering faculty, because some have to get tenured, some are untenured. We created this video as a way for everyone to speak in a way that no one person could be targeted by their university, but everyone could share something. And we were very strategic about which faculty said what, including making sure that the untenured ones did not say anything too polarizing. So this video ended up getting 7,000 views within the first month, so I'm going to share this with you next.
I'm Black with a PhD, but I still could have died by me. I am George Floyd.
I've succeeded using my head, but I still could have been shot in bed. I am Breonna Taylor.
I think teaching and learning is fun, but I could get killed while out on the run. I am Ahmaud Arbery.
I'm a hidden figure in STEM who puts my life trade on.
And can't be stopped, like Sandra Bland. All racism, I do condemn.
I engineer like Imhotep, but my black skin I can't sidestep.
I can't breathe. I'm Hera Garner. This is not a game. I'm Tamir Rice.
What if I'm next? Then it's hashtag Denise R. Simmons.
If it's hashtag Leroy Long, I am LaQuan McDonald. I am Ayanna Stanley Jones. I am Walter Scott.
I am Katherine Johnson, Philando Castile, Alberta Spruill, and Samuel DeBose.
We will not silence.
It is our turn to have a say.
So on behalf of the STEM community, this is what Black STEM faculty like us have to say.
It says PhD outside of our office doors, but we still get mistaken for janitors.
And we love our custodians. There's no hierarchy when it comes to Black labor. They allowed us to get where we are.
Say something back, to speak up and speak out, then we get blacklisted or just get kicked out.
Love to teach, only to get called bad names. Names they wouldn't own if you called them out.
Love to do research,
but it's only safe if we sell out.
Don't research blank or shout.
Keep the faith.
Keep the faith.
Black lives matter.
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 Black lives
matter.
I'll rise up. I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up. I'll rise.
So I'm going to stop that because time is pressing, but having a way to be able to speak some of those things that you normally don't talk about at work was a way for us to come together and do that. And then out of that, we created not only a website, but we came together and did research on things that people can do as an ally to help on becoming an anti-racist individual. And this is one that I found online at a website called it's about fear, right? Avoiding hard questions, learning. I understand my own privilege in ignoring racism, and growth and becoming an anti-racist. And something I say a lot is, you don't go straight from fear to growth in a week, right? But being able to have those uncomfortable conversations and being okay with discussing those things is the beginning, even if you don't totally understand it, right? And so out of that, we then built a call to action that we call on becoming an anti-racist institution. I won't go into a lot of detail, but you can go to the website to see it. But it has tenets like the attitude, clarity, commitment, resources, accountability, and it really does build. It's a process and it's levels. And once again, it's not something you do overnight, but you think about what are you doing now, and what can you do next year, and what can you continue to do to make the institution better. So it's looking at things like historical education, implicit bias and diversity training, individual and departmental accountability, fundraising, right? You can't do anything without resources to be successful, leadership and administration. How does your institute handle policing, spending of resources, disaggregating data, right? If you're looking at, for example, the diversity of the students, disaggregating would mean not counting Asian students and Black students and Hispanic students all in one box and saying we're at 20% diversity, because the experiences of me as a Black woman are not the same as a white male in engineering. Tokenism. We don't really do this with me anymore, but I'm on every magazine and website that Rose-Hulman sends out. Right? I won't say who said it. One of my colleagues was like, why are they not paying you a model fee? I ought to be making this money over here. Right, faculty, staff, undergraduate, and graduate students, right? Diversifying the students is great, but I talk about all the time, they're gone in 4 years, they're temporary, but it'd be wonderful for them to have some role models that look like them among the faculty, among the leadership, among the administration. So, some of the key takeaways from some of the things we did are societal awareness, describing how oppression and marginalization affects Black people in engineering. Institutional awareness, explaining why it hurts the institution overall and the urgency of benefit of change, like those videos I showed by Nicole Jones. Department accountability. What practices can a department take on to support systemic racism? Personal accountability. What can I do as an individual to dismantle institutional processes that support systemic racism? And actions, right? We talk about allyship as an action word. So words are wonderful. We love actions. But what action can we do to back those up? And the Black in Engineering Call to Action gives some great takeaways from that. And then in September 2020, I was asked to co-found Black in Robotics. And I was like, dude, I'm tired! But I was like, how can I possibly say no when robotics is like my jam? So I also co-founded Black in Robotics, and I'm actually the undergraduate and outreach lead for that. I co-founded with several people, but one of them is Dr. Oyana Howard, who recently became the Dean of the College of Engineering at Ohio State, and Dr. Monroe Kennedy, who is in robotics at Stanford. And Black in Robotics was created to address systemic inequities in the robotics community by focusing on community advocacy and accountability, networking, mentorship, a social media presence, and showcasing Black excellence in robotics, and a conduit of roboticists to participate in solutions and identify best practices. Some big ones have been lately are AI ethics and robotics ethics and justice in policing. A big one happened last year when Boston Dynamics dog was used to police a tenement in New York City, which went viral because once again, Black people like, we're out here marching about police and over-policing, and now you're bringing out robot dogs. So things like that. So the Algorithmic Justice League was then formed, where it's looking at where people who do AI and robotics work are committing, I will not allow my work to be used by police officers or in any way that then affects my community in a negative way. So it's a way to bring together researchers, industry, professionals, and students to mutually support and to help navigate academic, corporate, and entrepreneurial pathways to success, to advocate for more diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice in these organizations, to ensure we have a seat at the table, and amplify our collective voices for social justice. So one of the bigger things I do, like I said, is outreach. So a big part of that, this is Haley. I don't know if anybody remembers Nadine Schillingford. This is her daughter. One of the things we do is we started doing online STEM robotics workshops. This young lady is my daughter's god sister. She just got into IUPUI on a full ride to study forensic science. And so what we did pandemic, can't do anything anyway. We shipped robot kits to their house, and then we would get on Zoom and build the stuff together. And of course, I can never do a presentation ever without showing my baby. So this is my daughter Kennedy with some of her demo videos. She's decided she wants to be an artist now, so I've injected all this STEM into her. She can program, she can build electronics, and she's like, I don't want to do none of that, I want to draw. And this is Hendrix, past Hendrix. Hendrix is important because I shipped a kit to my niece and her son, basically threw it in a corner to collect dust, and she gave that kit to a 9-year-old, and he built it by himself, and the kit was designed for 12-year-olds, so I always have to show him. So, out of that, like I said, people started to become so hungry for my content that I had to create a business. Not because I wanted to, I'm not an entrepreneur, sorry Tom James, wherever you are. Tom and I had talked about me becoming an entrepreneur for years and I ignored him, but because I got tired. It got to the point, I was being contacted on a weekly basis to give talks for free. I was being contacted on a weekly basis to do workshops for free. And I was like, this is not sustainable. Because at first I was doing it happily and then it started getting tiring. So that's why I started my business. And that's why I got a speaking agent, because you have to pay people for their intellectual property. After a while, it becomes a little bit manipulative and abusive. I still do a lot of free stuff, but I can't give everything away. And a big one was when I was being asked to speak at things where they were charging people an admission, but they were telling me they had nothing in their budget to pay an honorarium. So these are the reasons that I started my business. Not that I probably have to justify it, but I didn't really want to do this, but now you have to pay me for my labor. And you have to pay me to open my mouth unless I feel it's something important to me. So now I do my outreach and my free work through Black in Robotics, okay? So if it's not that, then you need to go figure out and redo your budget, okay? So that's where NoireSTEMinist came out. My STEM is for the streets. It's an engineering education consultant company launched in July 2021. I got a speaking agent. I still do workshops. I do paid events. I still do things with kids online. I spoke at community college. I spoke at MathWorks for Juneteenth last year. I've made videos for the Terre Haute Children's Library. I've done lots of things. Some of the things I can do already, but I think also this came down to me not realizing that people want this stuff. I was like, because I think sometimes as faculty, we don't realize, because we do it every day and we give it to our students every day. We have something really precious that people want and are hungry for, and we have to figure out a way to package that up. Yeah, I know I'm in the same shirt. I do have one shirt. So, I want to end by saying I do the things I do because they're important to me, not for the awards and not for the accolades. So when I started getting the awards, I also was like, people give awards for this stuff? So I just wanted to end by showing a couple of videos and talking about some of the awards that I received. All of this during the pandemic, all of this during my sabbatical. And the first one I got was an Indiana First.
Welcome back. An Avon woman is using her love of teaching to create a new path for the future of engineering. This Rose-Hulman professor is inspiring more Hoosier women, including a recent graduate, to consider making that career choice.
Growing up, Greenwood native Allison Shee dreamed she'd one day become a professional ballerina. After high school, though, she hung up her dance shoes to pursue a different career path for herself, one that is heavily dominated by men.
Why not? There shouldn't be a barrier. I think that there's no reason that a woman can't be an electrical engineer. And if somebody likes it, then why not pursue it?
And so she did. Allison, who just graduated from Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, is dancing her way into her dream job right out of college.
It's the dream for me. I'm going to be in the field of defense, so I'm going to be working for a defense contractor that works closely with the Air Force.
With an electrical engineering degree, Allison will be doing work on digital signal processing. The new graduate, a minority among her peers, says her education experience was a positive one.
In my more advanced electives, I'm typically the only female. I feel like I'm not treated differently because of my ethnicity or because of my gender, and I'm really thankful for that because I think I was scared going into it thinking that I would be treated differently. It's the case for a lot of people. I definitely recognize that, but I think we're moving in a really good direction that just doesn't play a role in the job that I can do.
Allison's experience was made possible by the women who paved the path before her, like her professor, Carlotta Berry.
I think that having Dr. Berry as an advisor and a mentor has taught me that you can be warm and exuberant and welcoming in this field, and I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned from her.
A big part of it is me showing people the diversity of what they do and how important that is, right? Giving them that different perspective.
Carlotta Berry is an electrical and computer engineer driven by a passion to teach. As a professor at Rose-Hulman, she knows she can inspire others who look like her to follow a similar path.
To me, it means being a myth buster, a mold breaker, a trailblazer, and a pioneer because, and I've told this story many times, there's probably only about 200 black women engineering professors in the country. So, you know, me being able to do this job is not just me educating people, but showing them that there's more than one way to be an engineer. There's more than one way for an engineer to look. We're not just Dilbert, we're not just Sheldon, but Carlotta can look like an engineer, my daughter can look like an engineer. And so it just means so much more when I walk into that classroom because I'm able to show those things.
She uses her experiences with discrimination, marginalization, and alienation to help others.
I kind of blindly felt my way through, and that's why I do what I do now, because I wanted that path to be easier for someone else. I do want to be able to have those kind of conversations with my students and my daughter, that if someone makes these kind of comments, you go, no, girls are meant to be here. No, girls can do math.
Professor Berry is changing the face of engineering through several outreach efforts to improve diversity among STEM students, to bring more women and people of color into STEM careers. But most importantly, her role as a teacher to be an example for the next generation of engineers.
By having these people in the room who are not exactly like you expect them to be, you have these really rich discussions and these really interesting solutions to problems. So that's why it's important for all my students to see me there. Although being a role model for my female and my students of colors is also important.
And her work is paying off as Allison prepares to enter the workforce, instilled with a mindset of she too can do this jump.
It's not just a man's field. If somebody enjoys physics, math, building things with their hands, my goodness, like I really enjoyed crafts growing up, and just being able to use my hands and to make something, why not? Why not pursue it?
Very inspiring. Professor Berry will be recognized next week.
So some of the things that happened because of the work that I did with Black engineering and Black robotics and NoireSTEMinist is the Indiana First Robotics Game Changer 2020. That was way before we even brought them back. They were showing love. One of 30 women in robotics you need to know by RoboHub. TechPoint Foundation for Youth Bridge Builder Award, Reinvented Magazine Interview of the Year, and I got a Wikipedia page. I was so excited.
Welcome back. An Avon woman is using her
page. So we had decided for Black History Month 2021, one of the ways we were going to amplify Black academics on social media is we were going to do a Wikiathon. So Black and X, which was a bigger community, got with the National Museum of African American History and Culture. They trained us on how to make Wikipedia pages, and you cannot make your own Wikipedia page. It's like a bias thing. And so we had all decided we're going to all do this Wikiathon, and we're going to make each other's Wikipedia pages. So we started the Wikiathon, and I had my girlfriend make mine. She was like, you already got a Wikipedia. Somebody had made me a Wikipedia page, and I didn't even know. It had been up since September of the previous year. I was so geek, sorry. I get geeked when I talk about Wikipedia page. Okay, so the other things that happened is Black Engineering received the ASEE Inaugural Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, DEI Award. I don't know how this happened either, but I got the ASW Best Paper Award in 2020 and the Service Award in 2020. I got a Wikipedia page twice. I must have, yeah, okay, never mind. I became an ASW Fellow in 2021, an IEEE Senior Member this year. I became the Giacoletto Endowed Chair of Electrical and Computer Engineering, and I've actually been nominated for 2 more awards, but I'm not going to mention those because I don't know if I'm going to get them. So I'm going to show you one more video, and after that, I'm going to transition into questions.
been fortunate enough to know and work with Professor Berry now for about 14 years. Dr. Berry is all about service.
And she's always open to helping people. And even if I just need to talk to someone, she's always there.
She serves as the student faculty advisor for NSBE, which is the National Society of Black Engineers, co-founded and now currently serves as a co-director for the Rose-Hulman program, which is Rose-Hulman Building Undergraduate Diversity.
I think the STEM industry should be aware that Dr. Berry is influencing so many people, like kindergarten through second grade, and then she volunteers for FIRST Robotics, which is high school, and she's also a college professor and influences that. So she has like every educational grade level, like she's influencing them, and it is just so impactful to have someone like spread out over all those areas.
The amount of work she puts in to help students who come from an African American background or Hispanic background is amazing. It's nothing short of impressive. I don't know where she finds the time to do everything she does.
Just being a role model on campus, so it was nice that I could just always go into her office whenever I was struggling in the class.
Every Friday after class, she would always see me in her office, and we would do insomnia cookie dates. And we just be talking about how, what I need to do to improve. I know that I can always get in contact with her whenever I need help.
Dr. Berry is the world's greatest teacher, and she's so funny.
If you're interested in improving the diversity and inclusion of your particular workplace, there's probably not a better person in the country than Dr. Berry.
And the Bridge Builder Award is an award given to an individual or an organization that aligns very much with TechPoint Foundation's For Youth mission to provide STEM opportunities for underserved students. And every year we nominate an individual or an organization, and this year TechPoint Foundation for Youth is extending an offer to you as the 2021 Bridge Builder to be presented at the Mirror Awards from TechPoint.
What?
Yes!
I'm over here taking notes. I'm thinking you don't want me to do something. What?
That's what I wanted to talk to you about.
You're gonna be nominated, right?
You are it if you want it.
I didn't know you were
It's April 12th.
And I was just like, okay, let's see what he wants today. And he was trying to tell me I won an award. So I want to end by saying, although it's not my responsibility to address the diversity problem on my campus, I did not create it, nor do I have the power, resources, or energy to fix it. Racism is not my cultural inheritance and therefore not my problem to solve. Abundant Black joy and freedom are not an exception in predominantly white spaces. I reject that. Black joy and freedom don't exist in contrast to professionalism, and speaking my truth and setting boundaries will inspire others to do the same. So the work of Black in engineering and Black in robotics is important, okay? But I like to say that the work that minoritized and marginalized people do on diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice on a college campus is like the sprinkles on top of the cupcake. But the cupcake has to be baked by the institution, and it has to be baked by the leadership. So this lecture and accolades affiliated with it for me and for my organizations are because I speak on behalf of the members of Black in Engineering and Black in Robotics who will not or cannot say what I have said today. And I acknowledge my strategically positioned role as a mouthpiece for justice in this season, and that I am a vessel for such a time as this. And thank you for receiving my message. And I also thank Rose-Hulman for a much needed sabbatical that was exactly at the right time when it was needed, although I did not know it. And Eli Lilly and Data Centric Solutions for hosting me to do my consulting work. And my colleagues who worked with me in Black in Engineering and Black in Robotics, as well as my friends, family, and allies who supported my work when I made a choice to use my sabbatical to shake the very rafters of the STEM Academy, and I could not have done this alone. So what's next? Next is I have to do my Giacoletto endowed chair work this summer. I have a fictional novel coming out in July there are going to be several, but they're about African American women in STEM. It's romance novels, but they're all engineers, some are professors. This is a roboticist. And they're called Elevated Infernal because her love interest is a fireman. I'm working on I'm working on children's books on robotics as well. I continue my social media in order to bring more people into and to amplify diversity in STEM. I am editor of a new textbook that hopefully will be out by the end of the year called Mitigating Bias in Machine Learning. Continuing to grow the work of Black engineering and Black robotics, and continue to expand my visibility and vision as a NoireSTEMinist. Here's one of my Robot Slam poetry videos that will be used as a catalyst for the children's books. And with that, I am done. So this last slide here is just the pictures from all the stuff I did that I couldn't talk about in the talk. I will say one other thing. I want to acknowledge that one of my best friends passed away during the pandemic, and it was absolutely devastating to me. And so one of the awards I got was on Zoom, and she was there, and it's my last picture of her. So I'm even more grateful that I was able to do some of these things on Zoom, because without Zoom, that would have not happened. Okay, we have about 5 minutes. I apologize. But if you have any questions, that would be a wonderful time to ask. Or if you have none, you can go to Jessica's talk next.
I have a technical question.
Yes.
How does AI relate to robotics? You're talking about machines.
Yes.
How does that fit into your work?
Yes. So I've been asked that before. I actually have a video on that. Man, I wish I knew you were going to ask that. I would have played my video. So what happens is robotics is really just a machine with software and given some intelligence to achieve a task. The artificial intelligence comes in the brain of the robot. It's how the robot makes decisions and how the robot does things. So that's why AI ethics also plays a part in robotics ethics, because depending upon how you write your software, the robot can make some decisions that are not appropriate, right? So even though I was talking about the robot dog in New York, which right now is completely remote controlled and teleoperated, the concern for people of color is, what if they make it autonomous? What if they put any kind of weapons on it? And now all of a sudden that same robot has to make decisions about good guy, bad guy. Or we already know artificial intelligence has problems with facial recognition. What if they now use that on the robot and the robot's going, I think that's the bad guy, but what if the bad guy was really over here? So the same AI bias issues that exist in just software also exist in the robot when you use AI or machine learning or deep learning to write the brains of the robot, and now the robot is using that to make decisions about doing things. Thank you for that. Yes?
Well, I just want to start and say how fortunate I feel to have you as a friend and colleague, and just how impressive all these accomplishments are. And the line of question I have is something only if you feel comfortable talking about. But from my perspective, it's really easy to embrace all that you're doing now that you've become so successful and have received these awards. But I know from talking with you, early on when you started at a very supportive place, you know, like Rose, where we really value our community and our culture, that things weren't always that way in terms of welcoming your ideas and your efforts, but that you still were able to persevere. So without getting into any kind of specifics or names, can you in general share for the audience what things were like in your first 5 or 6 years in terms of what you were experiencing and what that did to your morale?
I think a lot of it was finding a community of allies, which were not always necessarily people at Rose-Hulman. Like I talked about in my sabbatical talk, not my sabbatical talk, my full professor talk, is the CHOP dots. Finding the community of women, engineers, professors at other schools, and saying, how do you handle this when this happens to you? What do you do when this happens? And also getting older and maturing. I don't know if I've shared this with a lot of people. I don't know if a lot of you here, but Rob is here, so I don't know if I should say this. But my first year, I yelled at my students and walked out of class and did not go back. Because I was like, I'm not going to stand up here being disrespected like this. And I went home that night like, oh God, I'm not going to get tenure. And I was surprised that nobody ever heard that story. I don't think a lot of people, the one person who knew about it ended up leaving Rose. It was my robotics class. And there was a professor who was sitting in my class just because he wanted to learn robotics. I didn't even realize he was there that day. And I was sitting in my office in tears, and he comes to my office door and goes, everything okay? Were you in the room? And I totally forgot he was there. God, I don't remember the guy's name anymore. But anyway, my point is, I had to make a decision that what I'm doing is so important that despite the daggers and darts and all that I was going through, I had to stay and I had to make it better because it wasn't just for me. It was for the me who was in that classroom 25 or 30 years ago. And I think I have made it better. So thank you for that. Any other questions? Because I know Jesse's got to go. I don't keep saying that. That's my beloved. All right, well, thank you all